Hi, everyone. It is Mikayla Rose, owner of Gift from Neptune, and I'm so freaking excited to have my beautiful mother here with me today. I talk about my mother all the time and how pivotal and crucial she was to my spiritual journey. So much wisdom. Her birthday is this week as well, so what a perfect, and it's a Leo moon today. So what a perfect time to have her on my platform. I'm so excited to have her here. So this is Caroline, aka Divine Mother, aka Alien Goddess, Angel, and any other euphemism that she would like to use. So, of course, mommy, introduce yourself. What do you do? Who are you? Like, tell the people who you are.
Yes, indeed, my sweet love. Well, for you, I'm Mama Rose. But I do self-identify as a goddess. I feel like all women are goddesses. And even if no one else thinks of me as a goddess, what's important is that I think of myself as a goddess. And I feel like what's important is how you think about yourself. Because no matter what, nobody could like me, but as long as I like me.
Period.
And so I'm Mama Rose, aka Goddess Caroline. And like Mikayla said, I'm coming up on, my birthday. My birthday is on February 14th. It just happens to be Valentine's Day, okay? And it's celebrated far and wide. Everywhere I go, I feel like my birthday is being celebrated because of all of the balloons and,
Yes.
um, you know, uh, roses and heart-shaped pillows and neon lights and heart-shaped wreaths on doors and stuff like that.
Yes.
So it's
Mm.
fun. When I was growing up, and even to this day, when
Mm.
people learn that it's my birthday, like for example, if I have to show my driver's license as ID, always get the same um, response.
Hmm.
You're a Valentine Day baby.
It's like, no, that they're celebrating me, first of all. No, I totally feel that. Totally perfect for your Leo moon. Like, whole world is
Yeah.
center stage for you, and center stage has kind of been like my theme for this era that I say that I'm in right now, where it's like, how do you embrace your star power? How do you embrace, your unique individuality and your creativity? And so, as someone who is, celebrating their 60th birthday coming up and, has experienced so much life and so many generations and so many changes in the world, what advice would you give, whether, you can obviously you can talk to me, but to anyone who is my age or is kind of going through the motions of trying to figure out who they are, what advice would you give to anyone, you know, in
Yes, well, I
power?
would
Yeah.
first and foremost reiterate how it's important that you love yourself
Mm.
no matter what, because there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like you. There's always going to be opposition. That's just life. But what's important is that you love yourself. When you look in the mirror, you like what you see, regardless. And I feel like it's important to understand your energetic makeup. Like, I'm really into energy. I'm really into, astrology, astronomy. And so I'm really into you understanding who you are at an energetic level. And then this way, you could understand your ebbs and flows, and you could understand um, how to even navigate life. I don't feel like your natal chart is your destiny. I feel like when you know yourself, both the yin and the yang, the positive and the negative, because they're both, the universe is based on balance. There's the sun,
Right.
there's the moon. So you're going to have both. And so I feel like when you have an understanding of your energetic makeup, that's That's self-love. That's
Mm-hmm.
self-care, understanding yourself. And then you understand why. You can
Yes.
finish that with why I may feel this way, why I have may have gone through these experiences. Like for example, I've lived long enough to look at my chart and see it played out. For example, I have Pluto and Uranus in my seventh house. The seventh house is, the house of for this instance,
Mm-hmm.
marriage. Pluto, my first husband, your father, died. Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
My second marriage ended in divorce. Uranus. So I can look at my chart and see how that played out in my life, even when I didn't understand my energy.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, I can say, wow,
Mm-hmm.
that's why nobody can tell me that it's not real. And that's why I feel like it's very important to know who you are. Nobody should be able to tell you who you are. Only you
Yes.
know who you are. And when you
Period.
don't, that's when you can be a follower, when you don't know.
Yes. I love that you bring up astrology because my audience, my community knows every time they ask me, how did you get into astrology? How did you know you wanted to be an astrologer? I'm like, my mom was getting on my nerves. That's how I got into it. My mom was into astrology. We would be like chilling on the backyard. We'd be like, oh my gosh, take a shot every time she says something about astrology. Like but y'all know how we are, those of you who are watching us, y'all know how we get when we are philosophized, however you want to say it, when we're talking about the stars and like relating things to the stars, we get so passionate about it. I think anybody who is so passionate about their craft kind of talks about it to the point, like ad nauseum, just very annoying. And so I think it's funny because now I catch myself doing that, like, oh, let me not bring everything back to astrology, even though I'm mentally always doing that. I'm like, okay, let me not do it. But my like I said, my followers know, okay, like my mom got me into astrology because she was getting on my nerves, and I was like, let me see what she's talking about. What is she talking about? This Mars in eighth house. What does that mean? Why? What do you mean? You got Venus in the 38th house. Like what are these houses? And then I started looking it up, and we could talk a little bit more about like your spiritual journey and how that kind of intertwined with my spiritual journey. But for the most part, most of my spiritual journey was about, I wanted a moral code. I feel like a lot of people ground themselves in whatever their spirituality is, their version of God, their religion, um, in order to know that they're a good person. There's no universal standard of what a good person, well, that's debatable, but for the most part, there's no universal standard of what makes a good person. And so I wanted something to root myself in, to know, okay, even if somebody has friction with me, I know that I did what's right for me. And so I would explore religions, not necessarily practice them, but just like read about them. Like, okay, what do they believe? Christianity, Islam, little Judaism, little Buddhism, Hindu, like what are all these things? I even looked into like Satanism a little bit because I'm like, I don't believe in fearing something. Like I feel like fear is only you only fear things you don't know. So I wanted to understand everything. And I kind of got to a point where it was like, okay, all of these make sense. How do all of these make sense? But they're all kind of saying different, they're saying the same thing, but they're saying different things. And so I was still confused. I'm like, I believe all of these things, but I can't be a Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist. Like, what's the hashtag that I need to be in? And then when I got into astrology, astrology was the thing that made me, first of all, it made me realize how everybody made sense. But it also was the thing that was like, you are always going to be a good person if you're sticking to your energetic makeup. This is the permission slip. I guess I can summarize by saying, right, where astrology was the permission slip to be myself 100%. If I felt like I was having friction in a certain area, I could look to that area of my chart. Okay, Mars is here. Okay, how did Mars react in this moment? And how could Mars react in this moment based on my chart? I have, just sticking with the Mars example, I have Mars in Libra, but it's retrograde. So sometimes I can be people pleasing, or sometimes I can like hold things in until I explode. And so it's like, okay, this Mars in Libra wants to keep the peace, but how am I keeping peace with everybody except myself, you know? So now I have those reflection questions based on the areas of my chart that may come up in the moment. And so I just in short to say, I love that you brought up astrology as the biggest thing for knowing who you are and standing in your truth, even if it's not something that, you know, you practice professionally or, you know, you are an expert on. Just knowing your chart and seeing the evolution and learning yourself along the journey, I think is so powerful for all of us to really root ourselves in who we are and who we can, how we can shine our light the best in this world based on our own blueprint.
Yes, you're
Sorry, that was
right.
so
I
long winded.
agree. Oh no, you're good. That's that aqua moon. I'm aqua sun and rising and Venus and Mercury. So I'm used to. But yeah, that's me. Like I don't do readings. That's not my gift. I don't do them for other people. It's for me. And like my energetic makeup is understanding my energetic makeup is my one and really only priority. And that's why I feel like it's important for people to understand their energetic makeup. Like you said, you don't have to practice it, not unless you're called to. Some
Mm-hmm.
people like you're good at that. Like you're good
Thank
at
you.
doing readings, understanding energies, interpreting charts. That's not my MO. My MO is me, myself, and I, so that I can understand myself, so that I can in turn um, navigate life. But even before I came into the understanding of astrology, I always followed my own intuition.
Mm-hmm.
I always, for example, even you can remember when you was a little girl, I used to say, you always get what you want. This is, and not in like a negative way, but
Yeah.
just being an observer, because
Yeah.
everything you wanted, you ended up always getting. And this was before I came to the understanding of energy, astrology, just observe life. Like astrology is life. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's life. So when you observe life, it's the energy playing out. And when you understand the energy, you can use the energy to your benefit, aka people put the word magic on it. If that's
Mm-hmm.
what you want to call it, that's what it is. And I'm
Right.
into magic. And I'm into working with energies.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm into like crystals. I got all my crystals on, because today is Tuesday, ruled by Mars. So I'm working with like hematite and garnet because that's like Mars energy.
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel like it's very important to understand your chart and understand your energetic makeup and understand who you are. And
Yeah.
then if you talk to somebody else who's into astrology or into, the tarot or whatever, they can't just tell you anything. And
Mm-hmm.
then also the energies can play out in so many different ways. Just because I'm an Aquarius sun and he or she is Aquarius sun, we're still 100% unique.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty of, creation, the divine God source, whatever you want to call it, is that, yeah, that snapshot in the sky
Mm-hmm.
is mine. Your
Mm-hmm.
snapshot is yours. And
Yes.
that's what still makes us individuals. And even like when I talk to people, I ask them questions. I don't automatically say, oh, you're a Taurus, so you must be like this, or you're a
Mm-hmm.
Gemini. I ask them questions because I want to see how the energy play out with them, because the energy
Mm-hmm.
can play out so many different ways. It's not black and white. There's aspects, there's
Mm-hmm.
trines, there's sextiles, there's squares, et cetera, quintessentials and conjunctions and inconjunctions. So the energy can play out so many ways. So I like to ask people questions so I could be like, wow, okay, that's how the energy is playing out in their life. And
Yeah.
still being being a student, because I'm a
Mm-hmm.
lover of truth, just like you. I'm a lover of truth. My whole life has been the seeking of truth. And I feel like astrology answered a lot of my questions
Yeah,
and
for sure.
continues to. Mhm.
Yeah, I always feel like for one, of course, we share the same sentiment where it's like this snapshot is mine. This snapshot of the sky is mine. You have your own snapshot of the sky. Our snapshots may not interact in the best way, but that doesn't mean that I'm a bad person or that you're a bad person. We just may have too many squares and it ain't we're
That's
not supposed
right.
to work together in this instance, but you have your own mission and your own duty and your own calling, and so do I. And I think I was going to say so. Oh, how you know I feel like astrology has really showed me truth in a way that's not veiled with religion. I feel like all religion holds some kind of truth because we're all funneling truth through our own human minds and putting characters on them and making them make sense to us and our culture and our environment. But I feel
I
like
have a
once I found,
question.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
don't mean to cut you off, but I
no, it's
want to
fine.
I want to stop right there when you mentioned like religion. I want to talk about the Bible because I heard something. Now, for me, I'm not religious, you know that, but the Bible is the best to me witchcraft ever. But in any event, that's another story. But what I heard yesterday that I thought was so interesting, and I want to know what your take on it is anytime there were like mentioning of 40 days and 40 nights, like for example, Venus is getting ready to go into retrograde. I don't think she's going into retrograde until the beginning of March. I'm
March,
not
yeah.
sure about the dates. Don't quote me on that. And Venus is going to be in retrograde for 40 days. And
Hmm.
so this astrologer that I was watching was saying she equated that with the Bible. Like she used, the example of Jesus being in the wilderness for 40 days. The story of Noah, um, the
Noah's
Noah's
Ark.
Ark story and 40 days. And there was another example, and there may be more than a few examples of the 40 days. And she equated that to
Mm.
Venus being in retrograde. So I don't know if Venus is always in retrograde for 40 days and 40 nights. I don't know if other planets are, but Venus is the one that she was focusing on. So, what is your thought about that? Like, I was like, wow, that really made me think.
Um, I just Googled it real quick just to confirm. And yeah, so Venus retrograde usually always lasts about 40 days. And so while I'll have to sit with this a little bit more, but my
But
immediate
isn't that
thought,
interesting?
it's
Mhm.
very interesting. And so my immediate reaction is, um, it's very funny that you bring this up now because I go through these dark periods often and I kind of let myself do it. Not for 40 days. Oh God, I have stuff to do. But and so it's funny because I feel like I just came out of another one. And I kind of was talking about it on my channel a little bit and how I feel like a lot of people have this fear of the darkness, but we're birthed through darkness. We literally pass through a womb to come in here. And then, as we're going through our journeys, we have to go through another womb, right? Another period of darkness in order to be rebirthed into another stage of our evolution, right? And so when you were speaking on that, that's immediately what I thought of like 40 days and 40 nights. Okay, when Venus goes retrograde, it's going back around the sun. So to us, it looks like it's going backwards, but it's going back around the sun, behind the sun. It's going into its underworld journey. It's being stripped of its resources. It's reflective. It's going through it's questioning what does value actually mean to me, and how am I showing my value and my beauty and my wealth and my all of the things that Venus represents. How do I show that? How is that showing up in the world? And so I think it's so interesting in all of those examples where like Noah was stripped of everything that he knew to be true, of course, because now we're flooding the world. So everything valuable is stripped. We're changing our concept of value, right? Jesus, 40 days and 40 nights. I'm stripping everything that I think I know. I'm stripping my perception. And so, like I said, of course, I'm gonna have to sit with this a little bit more. But I was just thinking of like this dark night of the soul, like era where, you kind of have to sit in the darkness for a little bit to see what needs to be. I like to call it the void space, or where everything
Yes.
doesn't have form anymore, because that's where
Yes.
new life is created. And most of those stories, all of those stories, after those 40 days, there was something like brilliant that happened. There was some kind of breakthrough, that happened. And so, anyway, I
Yes.
find it super interesting, and I think there's always like this revelation that comes from, even if it's not 40 days and 40 nights, even if it's just from some kind of depriving yourself. I don't even know how to pronounce that word. Depriving yourself, fasting, whatever,
Yes.
laying with yourself and letting the demons kind of just like talk and tell you what's going on, so you can be like, yo, shut up, or this not true, or you can kind of see without the perception of reality, because I feel like our personal planets, Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, give us the perception of our world, and how, like, our senses and how we interact. Um, when you strip that, what's left? It's just you. And you have to fight you in order to upgrade your perception. I hope that made sense, but that's just kind of
Yes.
how I see it.
Yes.
Does
Yes.
that
I
make sense?
understand. It makes sense to me. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I like how you touched on darkness. I feel like darkness has been so demonized
Hmm.
that people equate black, and I'm not talking about race, but we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
go there. People equate
yeah.
black or darkness with negativity.
Hmm.
And in all actuality, it is a negative charge, but not a bad thing. Like the
Hmm.
sun is the positive charge, the moon is the negative charge. And the feminine energy is black. The nighttime is dark, AKA the moon, that's feminine.
Hmm.
The daytime is sun, AKA that's masculine. And so the dark to me actually comes first. Like you use the um,
The womb.
analogy of the womb. Like even when you are birthing a thought,
Yeah.
you start in the darkness. It starts in your subconscious mind, the subconscious realm, aka the darkness, before it comes out,
Right.
aka the light, the
Hmm.
positive. But I feel like darkness has been taught to for us to fear. And that's why there was a time when there was like witch hunts,
Hmm.
because that's dark energy. And people are so afraid of that word dark, black. Look at me, I'm black, but I got on all black. And I'm drinking from my black cauldron. Black is so powerful. That's where you create from.
Hmm.
And so that's something that I hope to dispel just by my being. Like, I don't feel like I need a center stage, even though, yes, I'm a Leo moon, but I like being on center stage where I feel comfortable. But in everyday life, and that's another thing when you asked earlier about, what advice an elderly woman like myself could give a younger woman is, oh, I lost my train.
It's
But
fine. It'll come back.
yeah, it'll come back. But is that part of being elderly? No, I
Look.
think most people have like what they call those brain farts,
Yeah.
but embrace the feminine. That's
Hmm.
generally the message. Embrace the feminine. And we're in a time where there's the rise of the divine feminine. And
Hmm.
the divine feminine is actually where, abundance and prosperity is the divine feminine, aka Venus is the energy of love and wealth and beauty and luxury. And the moon, that's where
Hmm.
you create from. You start on the inside, like who we actually are our moons, and our sun is protecting our moon. But who
Hmm.
we are is our moon. Like I'm a Leo moon, so I'm actually like a Leo, and you're on the cusp, so you share.
Aquarius moon.
But yeah, it's it's just about knowing yourself. That's how I
Yeah.
feel. I feel like it's very important to know yourself. And yes, there is a like what? Like when you do shadow work, for
Hmm.
example. Sometimes that's something negative is put on that. But shadow work is
It's
so
beautiful.
transformative.
Yes.
Like I don't like I feel like every day that I'm alive that I got something else to
Hmm.
do, but I feel like I've done all of my shadow work. And even the shadow work that I may need to do, I can do it quicker now than taking, time away and going into like a hermit mode like in order to resurrect, in order to
Yeah.
come out resurrected, going inside and then coming out resurrected. But I feel like shadow work sometimes there's a negative concoction on that. But that is super important because one thing I can say that I've learned all human beings, it's the human experience to go through trauma. And I don't only mean like this trauma is when you come out your mother's womb, that's trauma. When you
Because
are,
what is this?
yes, breastfeeding and then the breast is taken away, that's trauma for the baby. When you had to go to daycare, that's trauma because it's separation.
Yeah.
That's the kind of trauma all human beings have anxiety, stress, insecurities,
Mhm.
depression. So I'm more in the internal realm first now.
Mhm.
And so when you realize that, that's so empowering because it's like nobody is above that. I don't care what color you are, how fat you are, how skinny you are, how black, how white, how light, how rich, how poor, where you live. That's the human experience.
Mhm.
And when you realize that becomes part of your shadow work, yes, but that also makes you empowered because that
Mhm.
takes away your insecurity because you're like, why am I insecure about her? Why am I insecure about him? He crazy
Right.
just like me, stupid just like me, stupid human. You know how Aquarius is, you think all humans are stupid, so I'm not a human, by the way. But you know what I mean. Like it's
Yeah.
so empowering because then you really, just because you don't see it, that's the subconscious realm, that's the dark realm, that's the feminine realm.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean that it's not happening, but we mask it with our risings or, our sun, because that's to protect it.
Right.
But all human beings go through that. And when you realize that, that's when your shadow work starts and you can heal from that.
Mhm.
And then, have a better life. And when I say better
Yeah.
life, I don't mean like materialism and stuff. Yes, that will come with it, but your
Mhm.
mental health is so healed
Yeah.
when you shadow work.
And you change that reality because our mental health, all of the things that we interact with in the world, going back to that word perception. So when you recognize these like lower, using your term, lower vibrational patterns that you may have experienced. It's like, okay, like how you were saying, I don't feel like it takes me as long now. It's like, yeah, because now you've gone through the period of recalibrating your brain and recalibrating your perception and rewiring anything that may have been ingrained in you from childhood or from trauma or whatever. And now it's like, okay, since I've already rewired this and I did the work to rewire it, yes, I am still gonna go through things as a human, but now it doesn't take me a week, a month, 6 months of depression to
Yes,
process this. I can
yes,
just say, okay, remember, I always whenever I go through like super dark periods or like when I talk to other people or give them readings, I'm just like, remember what it is that you believe. Always come back to what it is that you believe, but you can't know what you believe until you go through some kind of period of darkness, in my opinion. And so it's like, whenever I'm going through these things, I believe, my personal belief is, we was not put here to stress. I was not put here to contribute my body to destruction and corruptness. I don't believe that I was put here to work until I die, is how I can summarize it. Okay, so knowing that, how does this then turn into empowerment? Even if it does in this moment feel heavy and feel chaotic, if you know that all things work for your good, then how can you then rewire this situation right here and shift the perspective around this after you go through the motions? How do you shift your perspective around this to go back to what you believe? And I think once you get older, of course, I've seen 28 years of your journey, and I think even on the short 28 years that I've been here, I've watched you be able to um, just really root yourself in, no, I'm not taking that. No, I'm not accepting that. No, this is against my nature. Even to the point where, and not to be funny, but even to the point where it could come off as annoying because it's like stubborn. It's like rigid in a way. I think that's a very like fixed sign thing. But I don't think it's a bad thing, but it can be like, dang, they don't move on nothing. You kind of have to be that way. Like it takes a lot of convincing, um, just in my interactions with you and other air signs, where it's like I have to convince you, not air signs, other fixed signs. I have to convince you of something that takes you out of that fixed energy. And I think that's a very powerful thing because y'all, I'm not just moved by anything. Like, yeah, I can change, I'll evolve, but it's like you gotta convince me that this is worth evolving. And so that brings me to my next topic, or what I was gonna ask you is, how do you decipher constructive criticism from I'm just not doing that and y'all can kiss my ass? How do you decipher the two? Loaded question, I know.
Um,
I
well,
think you've done a good job though.
huh?
No, I was just saying I think you've done a really good job at that. I don't know if it's just so natural to you that you never had to think about it. But as someone like me who's like, I am mutable, and I even though I have that fixed moon, I still have a lot of mutable energy. I have a Virgo rising, I'm Pisces, Sun, Mercury, Venus, South Node, and so I'm always like, okay, I want to be rooted in who I am, but I also want to, not be rigid, or I want to be liked, or I want to be able
Yes.
to kind of just go with the flow. So as someone like me who is trying to learn, okay, how do I know, okay, this is constructive criticism, something I should take into consideration, or that ain't who I am and I ain't going with it. Like, what
Right.
advice would you give to someone like me?
Well, um, when you say constructive criticism, that's great because that's a criticism that's coming with love,
Mm-hmm.
um, as opposed to just a criticism that's coming with negative energy or coming with hate. So constructive criticism, I can take, but if it's a criticism coming with hate, I'm still, that's where I like being, that's when I like being a fixed energy,
Mm-hmm.
because like I know who I am and you can't tell me who I am. But at the same time, my North Node is in Gemini, which is
Mm-hmm.
mutable. So as I'm getting older, and I mean like recently over the last, I'm gonna say year, is when I'm more conscious to be more mutable. But as you already know, like I stand 10 toes down for what I believe in, even if I have to stand by myself.
Okay,
Like
like that meme with other people. It's like y'all got me stuck. Yeah,
yes, I
yeah.
love that meme that you sent me. Could be 100,000 people, but if I don't believe it,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing it because I trust my own intuition, my higher self. And that's another area of advice that I would give. Always trust yourself. And let's go back to you as like a child. Like even like again, before I understood energies or was in any way into astrology outside of reading something in the daily newspaper,
Mm-hmm.
some so-called horoscope, I always trusted my intuition. And that's something when you was growing up and you was in school, I didn't want that to be suppressed
Mm-hmm.
because I know that when you go into the school system and you go into the world, you can second guess yourself because there's so many different messages coming at you and
Yeah,
so many people telling you who you are, who you should be. And so that's one thing I always taught you, as you can
yeah.
attest to, is that
No, I
stay true to
literally.
yourself, trust yourself, stay with your creativity. And even like back then, like I was like, even though I worked my whole life, I didn't want to see that for you. I was
Yeah.
like, I started putting into you, business minded and investing. And at the time, my whole thing was, I don't want to teach her to follow this horrible path. This path is horrible. It's harsh on a woman, it's
Hmm.
harsh. But I mean, I'm generally speaking too, because everybody is different.
Yeah.
But
Everybody
I
has
just
creative
feel like
energy and
women should have, not feel pressured to leave their children, their babies,
hmm
to go out into the world because that's what the world tells you to do. If that's
hmm
something you genuinely feel is part of your life path, sure. But your children should always come first. Like when I was growing up, like my mom and dad, like my mom was able to stay home and be with her babies. And when we got home from school, my mom was there because my dad went out and he was the provider and he was the protector. And he protected my mom and his children, his daughters. Now, when we got a little older, like when I went to here in the South, they say middle school. New York City, we say junior high school, intermediate school. When I got into intermediate school, my mom did go back to work, and she probably, wanted to help her husband, but at the same time, it could have been more than that. I don't know. Maybe, you know, um, she wanted to,
go outside.
go
Like
outside, go
maybe she
outside,
just
be
wanted
around
to, yeah,
adults
yeah.
and stuff too. But I feel like women, like our children need us because a lot of times women can feel, oh, but I want to give my child a better life than I had. And that's true as far as materialism. But a lot of times, because we need money, I don't take a vow of poverty. My Jupiter's in Taurus. So I love luxury and valuable. I value
Yeah.
my comfort and my luxury, but I feel like children a lot of times they just want their mom. Like you can
hmm
shower your children with materialism, toys, and you know gifts
Yeah.
or whatever. But if you're not there, your children just want you. Like when you was a little girl, you wanted me. Now your dad, my first husband, as I stated earlier, died when we were married for 11 years, but the last 3 years were when the first 3 years of your life. And when he died, like prior to him dying, we didn't plan to put you in like
Yeah. And
school, if
daycare
you
and
will,
stuff.
until you were like around 5, because your
hmm
dad worked at night, I worked during the day. And so there was always a parent with you. Once
hmm
in a blue moon, your dad would, his schedule would change and he would have to go to work during the day, and you would be like with his mother, his family, or with um there was a time you would be with like my family, my sister, and it's nothing against them. It was just like my overprotectiveness because I hated that. I was like, why do you have to? I only
Yeah.
want her to be with you and me. Like I was
Yeah.
very, very super protective of you. And I got slapped for that, but that's another story. But
Mhm.
because I always had to go to work, in order to provide us with a nice lifestyle. And I was brought up to go to work. I wasn't brought up to have my own business like I do now, or be an investor and have passive income to provide so I can be home. I had, the only thing I knew was to go out and work to make sure, we had a nice place to live and we had everything we needed and everything we wanted. But at the end of the day, as a child, you would want me. Like you would want me as a baby. I remember like when I went right after, Michael had died, um, or made his transition,
Yeah.
transform, however
Say
we want
that.
to
Yeah.
interpret it. I'm like death. Like I don't fear death. Death and
Yeah.
life go together. But and I took you to Donna's house, my sister, and you was crying out the window, mommy, and I cried too. I cried, oh my God, because you was crying. You was like, Mom. me, don't go, don't go. And I didn't have a choice. I had to go to work. But I was
Yeah.
thankful that where I worked was like within walking
Mhm.
distance from where Donna lived. When you was in daycare, you went to a great daycare. Like
Mhm.
we were all like family.
Mhm.
And that was in walking distance from my job too. So I would come on my lunch hour and stuff like that. And of course, you adapted, but the initial, that's
Mhm.
trauma. The initial
Mhm.
shock, that separation um, from your mom, from your parent, from your nurturer, from your protector is trauma and is shocking. So children need, you know, their moms, in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
that's why I advocate for, women to, make sure you're with a man who's a provider so that when you're pregnant, you know, you can be at home instead of
Mhm.
out 9 months pregnant, 8 months pregnant, and you're out in the world working. Like that's so masculine.
It's
It's
so
not
hard on the body.
protecting. Yeah.
Um, I
So
um I always talk about how I think you did your big one. Like that's the phrase I always use. Like my mom really did her big one raising me because I even hear some conversations, just from my peers and stuff about how they were forced to go to school or they were forced to get a career, do things the quote unquote right way. And so even now, as they're older, they don't know what they want to do because they never had the opportunity to kind of explore that versus, and I'm not saying anybody's better than the other because everybody's experience is their own. But I can say like I love that you always were like, when you go to school, you do what you have to do. Like you make good grades, you listen, you follow the rules. But when you come home, this is always a place for you. This is a safe place for you to create. And
yes,
I always that has always stuck with me. It was that phrase has always stuck with me. Like pay attention, do what you got to do in the world, and that beyond school, it has carried me through life. Beyond school, just in society, whatever you got to do what you got to do, but always come back home to yourself. That's kind of what I took from it. Always come
yes,
back home to yourself. And so even now, even though, sometimes on our journey, sometimes we kind of stray from the things our elders have taught us. So nobody put the pressure on me to follow things the right way, but I put the pressure on myself to, uh, oh, well, I need to do this, and this because that's what the world expects of me. And well, how dare I play when I'm not doing this, and this? And I had to really like just come home to myself and be like, nobody taught you this. Like nobody
yes,
told you that. Nobody ever told you that uh you had to go to school and then go to work and then get this level of success and then you can do what you want to do. Who wants to live like that? And so I'm just super grateful that even from such a young age, you were just like, follow your dreams. Like as long as you love what you do, it'll always work out. You can always find a way to make money doing the things that you love. And I've loved that so much, even though on my journey, I feel with freedom comes a lot of responsibility as well. And so I feel like as an Aquarius mother with an Aquarius moon daughter, um, I feel like that's kind of like this Saturn Uranus lesson for me where it was like, okay, you have the freedom to do whatever you want to do. Let's see how well you carry yourself. Like that's how I feel like Saturn
yes.
is to me.
Because you
Like
still
how
have
let's
to be
see.
responsible. Mhm.
Right. And so it
Yeah.
was like even I was gonna circle it back to religion, but I'm gonna do that later. But even just with like the with school thing, it was like, I went to college, I realized I didn't like it, but it was still just like, okay, so what are we doing? Like for me, like,
Right.
what are we doing? Okay, so this isn't the path for you. Nobody forced you to go here. It didn't work out. So what's next? It's not a matter of because I think sometimes when people follow their dreams, they're like, oh, my parents don't support me. Oh, nobody support. And it's like it's not. It doesn't matter if they support you or not. Do you support you? And what are you doing?
Yes.
And so I
Because
think it.
your a
Go
mom
ahead.
is a portal, like I
Mm-hmm.
was the portal through which you came through, but not from.
Mm-hmm.
You still have your own path,
Yeah.
and our path is individual, it's not grouped. And that's
Yeah.
why sometimes being on your individual path can be lonely if
Mm-hmm.
you have that kind of energy where you always need to connect. Like me, I'm very much autonomous. And
Mm-hmm.
so I can spend a lot of time by myself and, not necessarily with the world, which
Mm-hmm.
really helped me to understand myself because I spent a lot of time with myself and I love myself.
Mm-hmm.
But, a mom is a portal. And, we want our children, like you said, successful. Like, what is that? That's why I
Right.
used the
What does that mean
what
to
is
you?
success? What does that mean to you? Because a lot of
Right.
people equate that with materialism. But what if you have all the materialism, but your mental
Your
health is
spirit.
off, or your
Right.
physical off, or your
Right.
spirit is off? So I
Yeah.
feel like we need a combination of everything to be
And
like,
I
to me, I consider myself successful because I'm happy
yeah,
and I'm at peace.
I consider myself successful too. But one of the things that I think really sets you apart, in my eyes, of course, I'm going to big you up because you're my mother. Um, I think you have taken the time to ask me. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is, you always ask me. Well, how do I feel about that? I could be coming to you about something that happened with a friend. You'd be like, "How did that make you feel?" You wouldn't just immediately be like, "That ain't your friend," or "That ain't what you're supposed to do." It would just be like, "So what did that mean to you?" Like, and I think a lot of times, sometimes we start to see our parents project onto us and like everything. Oh, I didn't have this, so you need to get this. I gave you this, so you need to go be this. And it's
Yeah,
like kind of like how you were saying, I didn't ask for that. You gave that to me because that's what you felt I needed, whatever, which I'm grateful, but it's like I didn't ask for that. And so it kind of takes away the individuality from
yeah,
the child to the point where now there's so much pressure to
yeah,
be this certain level of success in the eyes of the parent where you feel like you can't let them down. And I always felt like, I don't know if it's your Leo moon with like let like your way of nurturing is embracing individuality, but I just always felt like with you, it was never like you need to go do this. It was always, what are your dreams? Oh my gosh, you can when every time that I showed an interest in something, you made mountains move to nurture that something. Whether I stuck with it forever or not, you always were like when I was seeing heavy, it was like I was in Inspire the Fire. Like you put me around people who could nurture that creative side. I was
mhm,
you would take me to different to the mosque, and you would take me around different like backgrounds of people, and you would just always nurture that side of me that was interested in something, whether like I said, whether I stuck with it or not. So even now today, as I'm an adult and I'm kind of, like I said, I'm in my center stage era, so I'm like working through my Leo 12th house, and my son, and like my childhood, and I'm coming back to painting, and I'm coming back to singing and music and expression, and all of the different hobbies that I used to find peace in, that I've abandoned because I let the weight of the world tell me who I was
yes,
instead of just listening to my mama who told me I could
yes.
be whoever I want to be. Now I just really appreciate you so much more,
Well, I
just because
appreciate
it's
you
like,
saying that.
yeah, of course. I'm gonna always big you up because I think the mother daughter dynamic is always, it's so important to talk about.
Yes.
And there's
And even
always
the
something.
negative side, because there's still
Right,
other sides that because
right,
mothers and daughters can clash. And we've had
right,
our clashes, like,
right.
you
That's what
know,
I was gonna
we
get into. Just
we
like,
can be a little vulnerable here.
yeah, I'm real. I
We've
try
had
to keep it real as much
yes,
as you're comfortable with. But there's all I was gonna say with the mother daughter dynamic. There's going to be friction because we're humans who are also individuals, and I'm a woman now who is learning how to be a woman. Because this tends to always start around the teenage years. So it's like
yes,
I'm learning who I am outside of my mother, and
yes,
when you're trying to like people be like, "Oh, you trying to boss up?" Like I don't know. I didn't. Sometimes you go through that period where you're trying to like assert your authority and assert your autonomy,
yeah,
um, with your parent, whether you're a boy with a dad or a daughter with a mother. There's always a friction there, and so, but
yeah.
I think I say that to say I think it's so powerful to be able to come back and circle back and say, you know what, this lady is popping. Like I was bugging out, I was tripping. Like,
Yeah, I did the same thing when I was a teenager, and I used to give my mom a hard time, but my dad was there to,
mm-hmm.
my dad was
The
that
balance.
real masculine
Uh huh.
presence, that presence that you revered.
Yeah.
But then when I got older and like you said, became a woman, and then I was like, wow, I looked at my parents one way when I was a teenager and I was rebellious and I didn't want to. And then when you get older, you appreciate it. It's like, wow, I appreciate the things
Hmm.
that they did. I appreciate you know,
Yeah.
because that's what made me the woman that I am today. But when you're going
Right.
through it, you don't understand. And there's no like necessarily, blueprint
Hmm.
or, book. Like a motherhood is intuitive,
Yeah.
you know. I can't speak for fathers, of course, but motherhood is intuitive. Like when I
Hmm.
had you, my instincts peeked through the roof
Yeah.
immediately
Hmm.
when it came to you anyway. Like when I was in the hospital and, I had a C-section with you, and, the C-section kind of, it's an operation. So, you're kind of told down. But every time the nurse would bring you to me, it was like instinctual before she would come. And yes, they were on a schedule, but I'm talking about like at the beginning, I would just automatically wake up and get myself together before even knowing that you were coming.
Hmm.
And um and your cry, like I could distinguish your cry from the other baby's cry. And
Hmm.
so that's why it's super important, to follow your instincts. But when you're a mother, you definitely, your instincts just kick in, because that's how you protect, um, your babies and
Yeah.
stuff. But and then again, going back to how even before I understood energy and astrology and stuff, I saw your creativity in you without even the whole she's a Pisces. I saw it. Like when you were 9 months old, you started singing in the crib. I remember saying to Michael, shh, and you were singing. It was just so cute and adorable and soft. And that's when I saw your talent.
Hmm.
And, that's one of the ways I saw your talent. And then when you made your first drawing, as you already know, I framed it because it was so artistically done for a 3-year-old. It was so
Hmm.
well done. And so I saw those gifts in you. I mean, we all have talents,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but I saw, just looking at you as my child, I saw your gifts and I knew that you were gifted, and I didn't want the world to suppress that because that
Yeah.
is your gift to the world. That's what
Yeah.
you bring to the world. Way from Neptune, you bring it
Way
on
from
down,
Neptune.
but through
My
Jupiter,
gift.
thank goodness.
My gift from Neptune.
Yes, gift
Take
from
it from the
Neptune.
void. Oh my gosh, no, you're
Speaking of which,
actually right. You're actually the inspiration for why I named my brand Gift from Neptune. And I tell people this all the time. Like you had told me, um, you said take what you learned on Neptune and apply it to reality. And it was just
yeah,
something in passing. I don't even know if you remember that you said that, but it was kind of just like that has been the foundation of even just my spiritual journey in itself. Like, there's a lot of sometimes you can kind of lean too far, especially me as a Virgo rising in North Node and then Pisces stellium, where I have this opposition at play. And it's like, you don't have to lean too far into the weight of the world, and you don't have to lean too far into escapism and delusion, because that's what it can manifest as and psychosis. But
yeah,
that's another story, so I feel like you just saying that one phrase has become like how I perceive the world. Like find the magic, find the God, the divine in every moment. Make the most mundane action
yes.
spiritual. Find the
And
spirit in everything.
escapism is what you do now. You paint because escapism doesn't always have to be negative as far as drinking or
Right.
drugs. Or,
Right.
you paint.
Yeah.
But also, there are many Mikaylas in the world. But I told you what your name means. I spoke that into you. I said, your name means wise child, descendant. You can be descendant from royalty or ascendant to royalty. You can pick
Mhm.
one. I know there's many Mikaylas, but that's what your name means
Right. You
because
was like, this is
I
what I'm
said
telling
that's
you.
what it means.
I'm telling you that's what this means. But that's actually not too that's not out of that's not too out of reach of like what the textbook meaning of Michaela is. Like Michael means who is
Yeah,
like God, and
yeah,
then Kayla means crowned with laurels. So
yeah,
who is like God, crowned with laurels, to me is saying the same thing as wise child descended from royalty. Like who is
yeah,
like God?
yeah. But I didn't pull that from a book. I pulled
Yeah,
that
no, I
from my
know that you
own
didn't.
intuition.
I know that you didn't, but I was just saying, like,
Yeah,
even from what you told me in whatever the textbook meaning is, I'm like, they're saying the same thing in different ways. And it's so
yeah,
beautiful how spiritually our names hold so much meaning. And that's why a lot of people, like when they go through their initiations, they'll change their name. Um,
yeah,
but I don't want to change my name. Like I see how my name has played out in my life. Even just looking at like who is like God. Like I try really hard to, well, I don't really think I have to try because I think it's in me, but just like keeping things divine, like,
yeah,
and always being victorious at whatever I do, crowned with laurels. Like that's descended from royalty. I am that, so I have to be that. So I have to position myself in this way. And I always laugh too about your Leo moon, laugh in a good way, because I'm like,
hmm
you just always instilled in me like look like you want to be here. Like I know I'm chilling right now, but at the end of the day, you can chill and still look like you want to be here. You know what I'm saying? Like I
yeah.
got okay,
Oh, you
eyebrows
look
is popping.
beautiful. I love your
Thank
eyebrows
you,
and I love your hair. You
thank
look
you.
gorgeous.
Thank you. And
You're
you always
welcome.
instilled that in me. And I remember talking to like some of my other peers, or like whether that be on the internet or like some of the other elders that I listen to on the internet. And when I say elder, I just mean older than me, you know.
Elder is
And
fine with me. I
yeah.
consider myself a senior citizen, an elder, an old doll. I don't have no
And they're just
problem with none of
I
that.
just I just see so much beauty in the elder generation, like people
Mm,
40 and up, and how they carried themselves, and their elders, and that beauty and glam that was instilled in them. Whereas
mhm.
today, those the people like that I follow, the elders I follow on social media, they be like, what happened? Like everybody is so chill. And I
But you
remember
know
you
what?
saying that. You would be like, look like you want to be here. Like that's
Right,
what you wearing today? Okay,
right. But
ciao.
you know what too? It goes back to energy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, like I can look at that. Like now, I don't know where my mother's Venus was as far as what
Mm-hmm.
house, but inheriting, my mother was very much, she comes from that, glamour Hollywood era.
Yeah.
And so, but for me, in understanding my energetic makeup, like I have Venus in the first house.
Yeah.
So I understand why I like to look at myself like a canvas
Mm-hmm.
and, makeup and hair and, clothes and stuff, because that's my Venus first
Mm-hmm.
house. Whereas, the next person, that might not be their energetic makeup. So, that's why it's not good to judge, because you don't know what people, that's why I don't think people should judge each other. Oh, you don't need all that makeup. First of all, I don't wear a lot of makeup, but nobody said I need
That's
it, but it's
cute.
part, it's part of, you know what I'm saying? I'm just using
Yeah,
it
yeah,
as an
yeah.
example. But
Yeah.
for that person who may say that, that's not their energetic makeup,
Right.
and that's fine.
Right.
This is my energetic makeup, and that's fine. And that's why there shouldn't be any kind of judging going on. And judging is, to me, it's low vibrational to judge. We're all individuals. We all have the right to be ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're in the age of Aquarius, thank God, that is that energy, individuality. It's okay for you to be yourself, even if it comes at the expense of, a little rebelling.
Mm-hmm.
You're standing apart. Like people
Yeah.
don't want to be told, you know, you got to be this religion or you got to be that.
Mm-hmm.
People
Yeah.
want to be who they are because the
Yeah.
vibration on the planet is higher. So
Yeah, for
people are
sure.
more into, it's the information age. People, we have
Yeah.
access to way more information than we did, like say, when I was a little girl, aka even the Piscean age.
Mm-hmm.
That was that. Speaking of delusional, that was a very delusional age. And people, was a very trickster age, in my opinion. Now, people are more,
Awake.
as they say, awake or
Yeah.
conscious or whatever. Like, wait a minute, I can be this and I can be that. And
Yeah.
there was a time I was really into this Ungawa Black Power, destroy right. Well, I even look like a Black Panther right
Panther today,
now.
you look good. I love it.
But oh, thank you. That's so sweet. But now I'm more into the vibration.
Hmm.
Like I'm more into the subconscious realm. I'm into, are we on the same vibration first? Then the outside. Like I'm in the internal realm, the yin realm, feminine realm first at this stage of my life, then the external. Whereas
Hmm.
back then, I was more external than internal.
Hmm.
And that goes back to, honoring the divine feminine, honoring the dark realm. You know, I'm more about that. Like, I feel like race and all of that is low vibrational to me at this stage in my life. I feel like, you know, are we on the same vibration?
Yeah. What's the goal?
That's where
Like,
I'm
what's
at.
the,
I don't care
are
what
we working
color is going
towards?
on out here because all of this is man made as far as categories.
Hmm.
Somebody told you you were
Yeah.
black. Somebody told you you were white. They're man-made categories, and I understand, you know, categories are necessary to an extent, but at the same time, um, it's almost like a disunity.
Hmm.
It's like we're all humans, like a big bouquet of flowers with different colors, different. But I'm more into being with the vibration because,
Yeah.
like, as above, so below. Just like we were talking about Venus, just like Venus is opposite of Mars, don't like Mars. The same thing is going to happen with us down here. Sometimes people's energy we ain't gonna like, we ain't gonna mix with.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm more about my soul tribe. And this is
Yeah.
a very tribal time because
Hmm.
Aquarius is a social group energy too. And you
Yeah.
find your tribe, people you're on the same vibration with. And that takes a lot of the stress away too,
Hmm.
because people who are on the same vibration are generally, well, in my experience, genuinely unconditional love kind of a thing. You ain't got like
Yeah.
that opposition where it's
Yeah.
like, oh girl,
I think Aquarius
you need
energy
Jesus. And
is,
I ain't got nothing against the Christians. Don't beat me up for this. But if that works for you, that's good. But that don't necessarily mean that that works for the next person and vice
mhm.
versa. What I'm into, my individuality and spirituality may not be what works for you, but it works for me. But there should be a mutual respect. Like
Right. I agree.
Aquarius energy, social groups, you bring your individuality to
Yes.
a group, to the world.
I was gonna say, I feel like Aquarian energy is, to me, the epitome of unconditional love because um, it's not about controlling or possession. It's about, I love you so much. I want you to be who you are, regardless of if I'm in your life or not, regardless of if we mesh or not. I love you so much to go on. You're on your journey. I'm on my journey. We are collaborating at this stage of life, and we may not collaborate forever. And that's fine because I love you so much. I want you to go on your own journey in the way that you deem fit. And I love that we're in this era right now where, people are kind of waking up to that. And I always see,
Yeah.
like, with Aquarius, it does rule groups and friends and networks. But I always think of like Saturn and Uranus, right? Where it's like, what defines a community? A shared goal, right? So it's like if we're all
Mhm.
in the same vibration, we have to
Yes.
have a shared goal. Whether that's ascension individually, um, oneness with the Most High. If we all share that same goal, whether we have friction within the community or not, it's not something that's that serious because we know
Right.
as a group
Right.
we're just trying to be better people, right? So it prevents people from being combative and just
Yes.
chaotic for no reason. And
Yes.
I think the lower end of Aquarius is just like just rebelling for the sake of rebelling. Where the
Yes.
higher end is like, no, we're rebelling against a system that tells us we can't be ourselves. We're rebelling
Yes.
against a system that doesn't honor the individual. We're creating communities that honor us as individuals. And that to me is just like the most beautiful thing. And I think um I just have been so obsessed with Saturn lately, and I think we forget that Aquarius is ruled by Saturn as well.
Yes.
Like Saturn
Yes.
shows you the constraints that you need to have around, or the boundaries, because I don't want to say constraints, the boundaries that you need to have around the people in your network, because that's what
Mm-hmm.
it is. How do you define
Mm-hmm.
a network? You know?
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're right. You're right. And like I respect you for who you are, and I want you to respect me back though
Right,
too for
right,
who I am. Not
exactly.
you, you know what I
No, I
mean.
know what you mean.
I'm
Yeah, yeah,
talking
yeah.
about
It's
the
like,
collective.
be Christian. I don't care about you. The only
Right, I
time,
don't care, but don't try to impose it on me. That's what gets on
no,
my nerves.
however you need to connect. I remember someone said there's as many paths to God as there are humans in this world. There's 8
Yes.
billion people on the planet. And then Christianity is very new. I mean, not to make this a Christian rant, but it's like it's a lot of religions are very new in the grand scheme of things. So how are you going to tell me that this is the best one when there's so many other there's so many other people that have lived before this time period. Our ancestors practice different things, like how I was talking about culturally, regionally, like in accordance to the times. How are you
Yeah,
going to tell me that this one thing is the only
right.
path to God?
It's
And that
better
don't even
than
make sense.
everybody else. Yeah. And
Right,
now I
right.
was raised in, the
Hmm.
church because growing up, my mom was very religious. I feel like, that's that Pisces in her too, finding, that spiritual connection. But back then, growing up in America, it was all about, going to church and, you know,
Community.
but once and even again, before I even came to the understanding of my individuality, if you will, or astrology or energy, I left the church because it wasn't serving me anymore. And I didn't
Yeah.
even know that terminology back then.
Hmm.
I just looked at it and I was like, this is not benefiting a community. That this is my
Yeah.
experience. And I went and was very much involved, very much into it, But then I just got to the point where my intuition said, this is not for you anymore. And this was
Hmm.
almost 10 years ago, like at least
It had to be more
eight,
than that.
9 years ago that I stopped going and stopped identifying, with
Yeah.
through a religion. But I feel like,
I feel like it was longer than that because I feel like
well, it was
I
around
was,
2016 I
you think?
stopped.
Hmm,
Yeah,
okay.
because I know you were still in high school because around the time when we used to go to
The friendship.
yeah, I didn't know if I should say it, but yeah.
I mean,
Um yeah,
what they gonna do
right.
to
You're
me?
right. On Betty's Ford Road. And then that was around the time because in all actuality, I looked around the neighborhood and
Yeah.
I'm like, this big
Yeah.
edifice, this big mega edifice, big mega
Yeah.
building. And I'm looking around this neighborhood and it's depleted.
Hmm.
They don't have their own supermarket. And back then I was real into,
Yeah.
black empowerment. Um, I'm like, people don't own their homes. They don't have like no credit union for the people. They don't have a way to make these people, you know, have more of a community, if you will.
Hmm.
No supermarkets, no owning of
Yeah.
land, no owning of your own houses, but the pastor
Yeah.
is living la vida loca,
Yeah.
living life, driving a big luxury car, living in a beautiful house, big old, beautiful multi-million-dollar building in the middle of
The
an
hood.
economically depleted
Yeah. Call it what it
area.
is.
And
Yeah.
so that's what turned me off. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not. At least when we was in Brooklyn and we went to St. Paul Community Baptist Church, where the Reverend Dr. John and Ray Youngblood was
Okay.
pastor. That's how you
It was
you got
so
to say it in the
cultural.
church.
It was
It
so
was
cultural.
amazing. And they
Yeah.
did a lot. They had their own school. Because had we stayed there, you would have been in that school. They had their own school. They built houses, Nehemiah houses, so that people in the East New York area can become homeowners. It
Yeah.
was loaded with culture. It was like
Hmm.
everybody from the judge, the teacher, the doctor, the lawyer, to the drug dealers. We even knew that some people that were part of our church were drug dealers. It did not matter. And
Right.
then you came as you were. You didn't have to worry about, oh, you got to dress up if that didn't fit who you were. Because the guys
Hmm.
were coming with their Timberland boots, their baseball caps. You know, some of the women, some of the members dressed, very Afrocentric with the, head wraps and the African garbs. And, some people wore their big traditional church hats. And some people, wore jeans. It was like come as you are. It wasn't that stigma. It was
It
that
was
was a
beautiful.
dynamic time for
Yeah,
me.
I even
Uh,
have some very clear memories from St. Paul versus Friendship, right? Where at St. Paul, I remember incense and crystals and the Ma'afa and these beautiful elaborate
the
shows and ancestor
Ma'afa.
veneration and you know history and culture. And
Yes.
I think even going to church to that kind of church to me was a very pivotal start to my spiritual journey, even though I didn't even know that that's what it was. Right.
Yeah.
And then we get to friendship. And I wrote about this in my blog, in a blog somewhere where friendship more so felt like an etiquette school. Like it felt like an
Okay.
etiquette academy where it was like, you have to be this way. You have to, you know, sit up straight. And I remember what turned me off um, to friendship, not church entirely, because I'll still go to church. Like I'm here
Mhm.
for the entertainment. But
Yeah.
what
And the
turned me off,
culture.
yeah,
Mhm.
but what turned me off to friendship was when I got. It was two occasions. One of the times was when I got baptized,
Mhm.
and they just kept making comments about my dress. I don't know. Like I've never living with you. I've never experienced someone telling me to tone it down or like this is too much. You're old. It's like we're from New York
And
City.
it
Like
wasn't too much.
it wasn't, but they was like, oh, you look like you about to go to prom. Like, and it really it didn't make me insecure because like I don't know, I just don't consider myself to be an insecure person
Well,
in
you was
that
a
way.
teenager, and so it
Right.
can make you second
But
guess.
it was
Mhm.
still like it was just I was just like taken aback. And so I was just like, okay, like I just brushed it off, but it still was like, what? Like and then there was another time that I had on we had went to church and I had on something else. I think it was like a long, flowy white dress. And I just kept when we were walking into the service, I just remember seeing people just like staring like with a stank face. And I was just like, I don't really like this. Like how you
Yeah.
pay attention to the sermon, to the word, to the singing. What you looking at me for? What
Yeah.
you judging what I have on for? So that just kind of turned me off. But
Yeah.
anyway, to
And
come
that's where
back
I
to
learned about altars, like having an altar from St.
mm-hmm.
Paul Community
No,
Baptist Church. And I
exactly.
always
And
had an
so
altar because they
you
embraced the
did.
Yoruba culture. That's why I learned
Yes.
about feng shui. It was
Yes.
like
Bro, I
chakras.
literally so when you I always think it's interesting when we're talking about our both of our spiritual journeys because the way I remember growing up was we wasn't Christian. Like we went to church, but my mom had altars. My mom burnt incense. She used to kill my throat with sage. Like I remember distinctly being like, "Bro, you're burning a lot. You're burning
Right.
oils. Like you're
Yeah.
feng shuiing the home. You got plants in certain areas of the house. I still feng shui my home to this day, like because of those things
Yeah.
that you ingrained in me. We always poured libations. We always honored our ancestors. It may not have always been to the extent that I do now, but
Yeah.
these little tidbits have always been ingrained in me. And so
Yeah.
I always when I referenced how we grew up, I always say, "Oh, my mom was an individualist. Like my mom did her thing. We went to church for a community or you know, for culture, but I never was like, oh, we were Christian." So it's funny, not funny, haha, but it is funny when you're like, oh yeah, I left the church 10 years ago and I was a Christian. I was raised Christian. I'm like, really? Because that wasn't how I saw our
Hmm.
dynamic. And so
hmm
the perception is funny to me, you know?
Yeah, because to an extent, it was about social groups. Like I'm really into social groups
Hmm.
just naturally, and
Yeah,
that's my
yeah,
energy. But at the
yeah.
same time, I did consider myself, um, to be a Christian, and that was one of the ways that I showed that that's who I was by, going to church. But then, and it makes me wonder sometimes if we stayed in New York, I probably would still
Will
be
still be
considering myself a Christian.
right.
I don't know because of the environment I was in,
No,
because of
right.
some
And
of the
I think
community
about that
Baptist
too,
church.
because when
But
you think
at the
about like, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but even
oh
when you
no,
think
you're
about
good.
like hoodoo in the South, right? These people went to church. These people were heavy in the church. We
Yeah,
veiled our, or some of us, we don't even know that's what we're doing. That's just how people worship, you know. But we veiled our African practices and our spirituality with the church and with the cross, and these effigies that would protect us, from public perception. But church for Black people in particular was always, there was always shouting, there was always someone being mounted by a spirit, the Holy Ghost. There was always chants and stomps and claps, and this is how we're invoking our spirit. It was always very uh deeply spiritual, more than religious. And so I'm even just like, I see these conversations about, oh, people are going back to Christianity, and I'm like, I don't think people ever left. I think people are just realizing how much you can still practice of religion and keep this spiritual grounding, even though
yeah,
that may not
yeah,
be everyone's path. Like I don't think I'll ever consider myself a Christian. I see why people have, like I see why they're like, okay, well, I mean, it's all the same. Like the more that I explore, the more I'm like, okay, it's all the same. I'll do this ritual. But sometimes I'll use the power of astrology. Sometimes I'll use the power of Jesus Christ. I mean, whatever. It's just like where you do. I
yeah.
think
It's a
the veil of
deity.
religion
Yeah.
is just like where you deriving
And
your
then
power from.
remember, it was forced on our,
Right, right,
ancestors. It was forced. So a lot
right.
of times when people of color, as we're categorized, went to church, they still were incorporating their spiritual practices
Yes,
into,
it's
and
so
like,
ingrained
didn't
in
Marie
us.
Laveau, wasn't
She was a
Marie
Catholic.
Laveau?
Uh-huh. She was
Yeah,
a
and
devout Catholic. She was at she
mhm,
was at mosque every week, but she
mhm,
still practiced voodoo. But it's like, it's you just using a different set of spirits, but it's still the same
yeah,
practices, for the most part. And so I say that to say, if we were in New York City, and I even said this in my book too, where it's like, I thought that's how people worship. I thought that's what Christian. It wasn't until we moved to the South where I was like, okay, this isn't what Christianity is. Like, I thought we all burnt incense and and talked about ancestor veneration and the crystal. I remember the rubies and the amethyst, like that was so
yeah,
big in our church. And so it was just like, I didn't, that's all I knew. And so
yeah,
it's like, if that's all then it's like, yeah, I am Christian because this is how my church is. Versus like, um, it's so funny now too, because we were so open, or I guess you were so open with me with like, find your own path to God, find your own understanding of God. Like, yes, we go to church, but I want you to make sure you have your own relationship with what God means to you. And so it's funny getting on the internet now, right? Where I'm sharing my experience with God and my practice and astrology and magic. And this is the first time ever in life where I'm like, wow, I'm being attacked for my beliefs. I have never experienced it. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me because it's like, it's just so weird to me, because it's like,
yeah,
I've always been raised, like I said before, you used to take us to the Nation of Islam mosque. Like, you always would talk about, even if you didn't take me specifically to a synagogue or to a Buddhist temple or whatever, you will always talk about them and talk about the practices that they do that we may, ingrain in our own practice. And so it was just like, wow, there's people out here who are just like so ignorant and think everything is demonic, and y'all gotta stop thinking everything demonic is evil. Demon and
yeah.
evil is not synonymous, but that's another story. There's people out here who are just so like anti anything that they don't know. It
Yes.
literally was mind blowing to me. Like, people say that, I don't know. I guess those were the rose colored glasses that I always held. because in my mind, everybody celebrates other people's beliefs. When I meet people that are a different religion from me, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. What do you believe?
Yes, because I like to
What?
learn, a seeker of
Yeah.
truth. I love to learn. Like this past Halloween, it was also the Diwali. I think the Indian culture celebrates the Diwali, and it just happened to fall on Halloween. And when it was Halloween here, people were setting off fireworks and sparkles because that's the festival of lights that India celebrates. And I was like, wow, I love stuff like that because I love to learn. Like I'm not, and I never have been like closed minded. I've always been a seeker of truth and a respecter of culture. And I love culture. That's one thing I always
I love
loved
culture.
was culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that I did grow up in New York City because every culture in the world is there. And
Yeah.
so I learned so much about
Yeah.
differences and stuff like that. And so even for me too, when I first came to the South, it was a culture shock.
For
It was like
sure.
literally a culture.
Yeah. Like,
Um,
wow. And it's
but
funny because some people will say that the South, that a lot of the culture comes from the South. Like that's what I've heard from Southern natives. And so, I just listen, but I'm just like, I don't know. I see so much. I guess it's just different, like
yeah,
I think it's more veiled maybe in the South, whereas in New York, everybody everybody is just so proud of who they are and loud
yeah,
about it,
yeah.
versus in the
But a
South it
lot of
seems more
blacks did,
covert.
yeah. They can say I can see that being said because back, during like the early 1900s, when there was a lot of segregation in the
Hmm.
South and, you know, people of who are categorized as black were being tortured and
Yeah.
hung from trees and burned and, you know,
Yeah.
having crosses burnt in their yards. So a lot of blacks, including my parents,
Yeah.
migrated from South Carolina separately. Like my dad was from Seneca, South Carolina. My mom was from Sandy Island, South Carolina. But my mom grew up in Charlotte,
Hmm.
and they migrated north because a lot of blacks were trying to escape,
Hmm.
all of the violence that
Yeah.
they were facing just because they were categorized as,
Hmm.
being
Yeah. And some
so,
of them
but
stayed and
then
built,
that
so
turned
maybe
into its
that's the
own culture up there
right, right, right,
because,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was gonna say something and I completely lost it. It'll come back. But
That happened to
um
me earlier, remember?
yeah, right,
Because we
right,
have
right.
so much
There's
information,
so
like
much to say. And
data overload.
yeah, and everything just moves so fast. And Mercury's in Aquarius right now too. So it's like everything is moving very quickly. Um,
Yeah, that's
but
why that's an example of how I can be very scattered because my natal Mercury is in Aquarius,
yeah,
so my mind is always, and then I got Jupiter in the third house, so that
so
makes me
far-sighted. Oh,
scattered.
that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say. I was gonna ask, do you have what do you have in your ninth house?
Neptune,
Oh, okay.
and
I
my
was just
ninth house is
wondering.
Libra.
Yeah, I was just wondering because when you said you always love culture, it just made me think of how much you ingrained culture in me. And I feel like that makes such a huge difference in how you
Yeah,
perceive the world. And,
yeah,
my father is an immigrant. Like he's Jamaican.
yeah,
Your
yeah.
second husband, an immigrant, Ghanaian. So and it was like you always would take me places. We would try different food. We would, we I don't think travel is limited to like location. I think you
Yes,
can travel with your mind, you can travel with books and experiences and people talking to them.
yes,
And so I think that made such a huge difference because we're not ignorant to what's going on in the world. Even I remember
yeah,
some commercials about Africa would come on and you'd be like, that's not true. That's propaganda. Like
yeah. With
they
the
are rich. Like,
flies flying on the
like
kids
I just
and
remember little
like
instances
they're
like that.
poor.
Or
That's the richest continent
yeah,
on the planet.
right.
But
Like you will
my
always show me
south
not to
node is Sag and my
got you.
11th house is Sag.
Hmm.
So I have that love
Yeah,
for, culture and
the
stuff like
world.
that. And then my Jupiter's in the third
Hmm.
house. So it's a
Hmm.
local, you know,
Exactly,
um,
yeah.
but I love
Yeah.
it. And I love that because I have an open mind. Like I'm not
Hmm.
closed-minded to be like, everything got to be one way. No,
Right.
it's the
And I feel like
rainbow.
that's
It's not
what's
black and
been
white.
trying to, I think that's what they I think that's what's going on right now, where it's like, you know, even if we can go as far back as the pandemic, where everybody is so isolated in the house, and then now I'm seeing all of this stuff about, oh, plane crashes, and it's like, oh, they don't want us to fly because they don't want us to get experience in real life. They want us to be isolated so that the propaganda can penetrate our minds even more. You think this is what's happening because you're not exploring, because you're afraid to travel, because you're afraid to go outside and talk to people. And then, so I just see how that's playing out right now, and how much sharing wisdom and being around different cultures has helped us in particular.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, I hope people don't fall into this trap of, oh, I'm afraid to fly, or oh, I'm afraid to talk to people, I'm afraid to go outside, oh, they don't like us, oh, we don't go over there to that side of town because XYZ, like everybody go out, touch grass. Like
Yeah. And that was the thing with the pandemic. I didn't
hmm.
let that make me fear people.
Yeah.
Like I was like, that's demonic to fear other human beings. We need each other.
Hmm.
And that's actually when I sought out
Your
spiritual
soul tribe.
expansion.
Hmm.
That's when I found, the first of, you know,
Hmm.
and my soul tribe has like expanded since then. But I refuse to let that weigh heavy on me that I need to be afraid of another human being. And I was not afraid at
You
all,
wasn't. I feel like
at
that's when
all,
you really stood 10 toes down.
at
Like,
all. I was like, what?
yeah, yeah.
I am not. I'm not falling into that low vibrational behavior. I am not afraid. I'm not going to live in fear. And I still don't live in fear.
Don't
And I never really
a
lived in
human,
fear.
not a human, like y'all
Yeah.
Aquarians say, a human could never. I love when y'all talk like that. A human, absolutely not. Could never strike fear in my heart. Not a human, absolutely not. That
And it's
pump,
something
that
how
pump blood
we're
like me.
humanitarians, but at the same time, we don't like people. Like, I'm not going to generalize. I'm not going to generalize.
That's definitely an
I'm going to
Aquarian
put
thing.
that on me. Like, I'm a
Yeah.
humanitarian, but I don't necessarily.
Love for the world, but disdain for the individual. Like you're so zoomed out, and so
Yeah.
like this is I always do this when I talk about Aquarius, where it's like you're so up here that
Yeah.
everybody is just like people that contribute to the collective, and not necessarily like, oh, let me like care about you and your whatever you have going on face to face with your silly human meat.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
always how I see it. But
Yeah.
so we have been chatting for a long time, but I know we can chat a little bit longer, but I did want to keep this somewhere around an hour. And I
Yeah.
think this was so great, and I can't wait to do more of these with you. And so
I do. I can't wait.
just to close out, tell us, for one, let's say like what's something you want to leave us with, maybe an affirmation. Let's start with, where can we find you? Where can we find you? What do you do? Where can we find you for more?
Okay, I'm all over social media. I'm on Facebook, Caroline Rucker. I'm on Instagram, MVP Shops. Um, I'm on LinkedIn, MVP Shops. Since I retired last year from the working class world, I started my own online e-commerce business, and I'm also an author. And what I'd like to leave, the name of my book is A Guide to Manifesting Your Best Life. And what I'd like to leave with our viewers is make sure you have power over your own mind. Like I'm very much into
Yes.
mentalism, and you have to control your own mind. Even when those thoughts come in that make you second guess yourself, immediately dismiss that thought with a positive affirmation. And be careful what you see and what you hear, because faith comes from what you see and what you hear. And so eat, if you will, with your eyes and with your ears, things that feed your soul, like positive affirmations, like you said, whatever that may be. I am abundant and prosperous. So That's what I would like to leave with our viewers. Make sure you control your own mind and don't let the media or, all that's going on in the world control you, because that's where a lot of depression comes from.
Hmm.
And so if you have to step away from the media and, like you said, go out in nature, that's like the best.
Touch grass.
Touch grass, walk barefooted if you can, go out amongst the trees, natural light if you can, even in the rain, in the snow. It's healing to be out with Mother Gaia.
Hmm.
Earth is a
Yes.
healer. And so make sure you control your mind and always affirm, something positive within yourself.
I love that. Yes, and magic starts in the mind. So if you can control
Yes.
your mind, for one, if you can control your mind, you are living, breathing magic, but it's very hard too. It's very hard to hex or curse someone who is in control of their own mind and their own spirit.
Yes.
I love you so much.
I
Uh,
love you too. And I
this
hope
is
we get
great.
to do more of these,
We
because I
will.
hope that it, helps people. And, of course, as we proceed, we can delve deeper, we can be more, vulnerable and, show our ups and downs, because we all have them. And, we can say or do something that could, help somebody else. So that's what it's all
Absolutely.
about. How can I make a
Yes.
positive difference in the world?
Yes. And y'all know I love to say a better tomorrow starts with you today.
Yes. Am I
I'm
doing
Mikayla
it right? And I
Rose.
got my
Yes.
nails done, so I'm real happy to show my nails.
All right, y'all. I am Mikayla Rose. This is Mother Rose, Goddess Caroline. And
Yeah.
we'll catch y'all next time. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.